Hey y'all, I think it's time we talked about fascism. Recently, we've heard stories all across the country from international students who are having their visas and green cards pulled. Some of them for expressing pro-Palestine sympathies, some of them for not having so obvious a reason at all. This week, we learned 2 international students at NC State have left the United States after their visas were terminated by the Trump administration. The university's student newspaper, The Technician, covered it. Both were students at NC State's College of Engineering, and both came from Saudi Arabia, according to The Technician. However, it's unclear why their visas were revoked. The university issued a blistering response to it all this week, saying, quote, "NC State did not initiate these terminations and was not directly notified of the changes. We are deeply concerned about the lack of communication from federal agencies and the impact of these actions on our international students," end quote. Now, this is all happening in one big frightening context. Trump's Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has been kicking students out that he's characterized as having pro-Hamas sympathies. Although criticism of Israel and its violent military campaign in Gaza is not obviously the same thing as supporting the Palestinian nationalist group, which was behind the terrorist attacks on Israel in October 2023. For instance, federal officials recently detained a Turkish graduate student studying in Massachusetts after she wrote an op-ed that was critical of Israel. They accused her of having engaged in activities in support of Hamas, which tracks with the Trump administration's way of thinking these days, that being critical of the American government is un-American or pro-terrorism. All of this fits with a pattern in the Trump administration, which has been aggressively cracking down on both international students and people they say are undocumented immigrants with ties to gangs. The huge problem is, in America, if we're accused of doing something wrong, we expect to have our rights read to us and we go to court. These folks aren't getting that. They're being targeted and quickly removed with no due process, like the South American immigrants Trump has been shipping out to a prison in El Salvador with serious human rights questions. The government is accusing those immigrants of belonging to a gang, but as Reuters reported recently, the federal government has offered little to no evidence for some of those deported immigrants. Sometimes the evidence offered by the government is that they have tattoos. Seriously, that's it. There's a word for all this that many folks in the traditional media are afraid to use to refer to Trump and his administration. It's called fascism, in which a dictatorial leader resists checks on their power, cracks down on opposition, and justifies it all as for the good of the country. Any of that sound familiar? Now, when people use that word fascism to refer to Trump, this is why. It's not to say he's Hitler or Mussolini or any of those other classic examples. Trump is not the same as Hitler or Mussolini, obviously, but many of his policies fall right in line with the classic definition of fascism. And if we're going to live with fascist things happening around us in America, like students being whisked off the streets by immigration officers in an unmarked vehicle for dubious reasons, that's what happened to the student in Massachusetts, by the way, then I think we ought to get comfortable with using that word. What do you think about all this? Tell us in the comments, and make sure you tap like to help amplify this message. Also, make sure you follow Cardinal and Pine for more North Carolina news and politics.